Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Rajiv, and my pronouns are he, him.
And I'm Carly, and my pronouns are she, her. And welcome to the Queer Sober Social Podcast. We're a chill social group of LGBTQIA+ folks who want to do more with their lives than just drinking.
Whether you identify as in recovery, sober curious, or just wanted to be sober while you're listening in, we're happy that you're here. And with that, let's get started. Alrighty. Well, welcome to 2021, dear listeners and viewers. Happy New Year. We made it. I think it's been an interesting start to the year, but 2020 was a year that kept on going. I feel like this is just 2020 kind of spilling over into 2021, and it'll be over soon, and we'll be right into actual 2021 shortly enough.
I
Just
love that.
just like how you don't have to really have New Year's resolutions that start on Jan 1st, you don't have to have 2021 or 2020 end on January 1st, and you don't really have to talk about New Year's resolutions on the 1st either. So here we are on the 6th, or 9th actually, that's upside down, on the 9th, talking about New Year's resolutions.
What day is it? What month is it? Who knows? It really does feel like 2020 part 2 instead of a 2021. I did have hope for like a slight second this year, but 9 days in and I saw a meme that said, "I've tried the 7-day trial period of 2021 and I would not like to renew my subscription. I would like to cancel. I would not like to partake in the rest of this year based off what we've had granted to us so far in this free trial." So if you're there with us, we're right there with you. I just want to say too, we've had a tough first week, but you don't have to listen to those dry January is canceled memes. I'm seeing those all over the internet. It's not canceled, and I just wanted you to know that there will always be bumps in the road no matter what time of the year that you're trying sobriety out. And if you did dry January up into a certain point so far of these 9 days, I'm proud of you. Keep going. It's so worth it. And I just want to, dive into a little statistic here that those who try out dry January are 72% more mindful about their drinking habits for the first 6 months of the year, according to Medical News Today. So that is a huge number of people because just once you start trying it, you have your eyes open to all the benefits of being sober, and it really trickles through the rest of your year. So January, we'll talk a lot today. There's a lot of turning points, but at the same time, you got to do what works for you. What do you think, Rajiv?
Absolutely. Whether you have sort of a bumpy road, maybe you made it sober through Wednesday. I mean, I wouldn't blame you, but at the same time, like just know that you can continue to try afterwards as well. And one of the ways that might be helpful is actually taking a look and getting an accountable buddy. So somebody that's helpful to keep you accountable to whatever you might be trying to do. So Dry January is pretty popular, especially as this is a queer sober social podcast. But there's other things that you might be wanting to do that you still might need some help from one of your friends or somebody else. Just make sure that you're doing that. So gyms are a really common thing, like working out or eating right or eating differently or whatever that may be. If you have somebody else to support you, that can just make it that much easier to keep up with it the entire year.
Absolutely. As well as just diving headfirst into all the really fun non-alcoholic things that are out there today, whether that's making mocktails or finding sober communities or reading Quit Lit, as it's called now, which is quit literature, which is just sobriety memoirs, books about sobriety, podcasts about sobriety, which obviously you're doing right now. So good job. Hey. There is an entire world out there for sober people, so much more so now. The conversation is way bigger than it ever was in the past, especially with the pandemic and all of us being at home and more mindful of our habits. So Dry January this year is kind of a big deal. So if you're just even here listening to us, if you're interested in it, if you're trying it, like that's a huge, huge deal. Like I just said, you're going to be more mindful about your drinking for the rest of 2021 just because of what you're doing for yourself right now. So that's really exciting.
I think that's really important as well to notice that like you just setting the intention is really important. And just your goal doesn't have to be super lofty. Like you don't have to be like, I'm quitting alcohol forever. Like just a dry January or just a dry like first week of January or whatever that may be, great. If your goal is just basic life functioning, 100% valid. If your life goal or goal for 2021 is to take over the world, 100% valid. A little scary, but 100% valid. So really, it doesn't really matter what your goal is, just as long as you're being very intentional about it and actually thinking about it before you go ahead and dive right in.
Totally. And kind of what we were saying, so January 1st, it's just another day. It's another day. And if you need it to be a fresh slate, it can be a fresh slate. But it's also an accumulation of every single thing that you've done that has gotten you to this point. So just really putting in perspective, it doesn't mean that you're just going to wake up and everything's going to be different. A magic wand did not wave overnight while you were in your sleep. So it really, what we'll talk about now is kind of setting, whether you set resolutions, whether you set intentions or mantras. It's a fresh day. It's just a day. It doesn't need to have any more weight than that, because putting the pressure on this January 1st has to be like the day that I become a different person. That is where most people start to fail, because it's not realistic. It's not realistic to change every part of our lives overnight. So just starting small and just being realistic of, okay, even if I don't have the perfect day on January 1st, there's still January 2nd. And then there's still every other day of 2021 too. So, just taking that pressure off and just thinking, okay, it's just another day. It's another 24 hours that I can do.
I think one thing that makes that a little bit easier, especially with some of the small steps, is if you can try building habits as a result of some of the small steps that you're taking. One quote that we found useful was, whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And so in a lot of ways, like not saying something is a choice in some instances. Not deciding to change something is a choice to continue doing what you have been doing. And whatever that may be, small steps of just thinking about what you're doing, actually implementing something small on a daily basis or weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever that may be, those sorts of things start snowballing, and then you start getting into more of a habit. And through that habit, it doesn't become quite as, soul-sucking day by day for whatever it is that you're trying to change, especially if it's really hard.
Definitely. I think another thing that helps with the whole January mindset is taking ownership and knowing that you are the only person that's in charge of your health and your happiness, and nobody is coming to save you. Spoiler alert, you are the hero of this year. You're the hero of your own story. You have the willpower, the tools, the ability to make your goals happen. So just making sure that you own the control that you have over that, your power, you're harnessing it and you're using it towards the place that you want to go.
For sure. And one of the ways that you can take ownership is actually starting to create your own boundaries with people, or like setting up where no boundaries make sense, especially if something like one of your goals feels a little too constricting. Like just exactly where you draw the line is up to you. And so whether you have boundaries with other people that you may not, that you're trying to maybe create some distance from, or like try to be independent from, that's really important. Or if you're trying to like reduce boundaries with something else that you might be between like different parts of your lives, like that may be useful. So all those sorts of things are things that you have to be intentional about and thinking about, and that you own as an individual. That's something that also helps you as just somebody that might try to be more positive, is like, where are you actually thinking about where you're spending your time and with whom?
Absolutely. So, if resolutions don't necessarily speak to you, what about intentions? Just making more broad statements of, this year I intend to blank, and just, letting your mind wander and see whatever comes up for you, whether it's, I intend to say yes more, or I intend to be more social. Those are more generalized goals as opposed to resolutions of like, I must do this thing, and then it's like very obvious if you're not doing that thing. And intention is more of a overarching umbrella term where you can just make small actions that are going towards the intention. So it's not as clear cut, so it's not necessarily as constricting or constraining as a goal.
I think one thing that I want to make sure that we touch on this year is, especially since it's the continuation of 2020, so things are still hard for a lot of people. As you're continuing to make your own intentions or resolutions, or creating your own mantras or whatever that may be to like support you this year, one thing that might be useful is to donate some time or money to maybe help other people also get there. And so, whatever that may look like for you, whatever sorts of organizations that you want to support or be associated with, they probably need the time, they probably need the money. And so, if you happen to have something extra, maybe that's one of your intentions, is to maybe donate some of that extra time or money to be able to like help somebody else be able to get to their goals for this year.
I love that. I love that mindset. Another thing that you could do in terms of instead of resolutions, honestly, is go inward and do some reflecting. I tend to get really nostalgic at the end of the year because it's pretty easy to remember where you were the year before, to kind of put yourself in that headspace. So it kind of gives you this like check mark of where was I last year? How did I do? But at the same time, just thinking about how you want this next year to go differently, or conversations that you didn't get to have that you would like to have this year, and just really taking stock and replaying key moments of the past year in your mind and thinking, okay, if this didn't go exactly according to plan, how would I want to do this differently? And how can I take that energy and me practicing in my mind what I want the outcome to be, and how can I translate that into this upcoming year? So, really taking that moment to journal, to whatever it is, to meditate on certain moments or memories, or just think about the last year in general. And you know what? This whole new year is a chance to edit and to improve upon the relationships that you have, the hard conversations that maybe didn't happen in the year before, because we did have a hard year in 2020, but 2021 is full of hope, and you can definitely use the reflect a little check-in that you do with yourself about how the past year went to improve the coming year.
I think that that's a really important point because a lot of people did use 2020 to go inward. Now it's time to action, perhaps, or you can continue looking inward. And either of those options are completely valid. But like as you're doing some more of that reflection, or as you're starting to now switch, like do that check-in of what you did last year or things that you've been trying to do for the past year, perhaps January in this time frame or 2021 is the right time to actually do it. Whatever that may be, again, because it's up to you. Like whatever your goal may be, how simple or complicated it might be, that's really a useful thing. For example, one thing that we might suggest is to find your community this year. For example, you may join a certain queer and sober organization. Or come listen to us on a more regular basis, or share us with your friends. Obviously, you can join us in, if you are watching this live, you can definitely join us in chat. And even if you're just listening to this after the fact, after we've recorded this, you can send us a voice message. And those are ways that you can actually come be a part of our community that we're continuing to try to grow. In a more immediate fashion, you can maybe even just try talking to your neighbors more, or like getting to know some people that are nearby. Create a little bit of a network for yourself. Most people, probably in cities at least, live in apartments or places like that, where you have some neighbors that are a lot closer than like single family homes and stuff like that. So you could probably very easily get to know people.
Yes, and if 2020 has taught us anything, it is you need to find some people that are close to you that could come help you out in a pinch. So, what better way to start with the people that are closest to you in proximity? Another thing that I want to bring into 2021 is just the thought of self love and how that looks for you, or what that feels like for you, and how you can continue to cultivate love for yourself, or if you haven't really thought about what that means, to how to start to love yourself. And some questions that help with that are just thinking about, how would you act if you already loved yourself? Or how would you treat someone that was a close friend of yours? And how does that differ from the way that you're treating yourself, or the way that you talk to yourself in your head? So, just really, again, going inward, just starting with this foundation of self love. And I think when you do love yourself, you realize that you don't need an escape. And that can kind of circle back to creating a strong foundation for sobriety, back to your dry January. If you loved yourself, you probably wouldn't poison yourself with alcohol. So, just a thought, something to ponder for sure. And there's no shame at all if you have realized through 2020 that your mental health is not in the same spot as it was when we started last year. And if you need to seek out resources or help for your mental health, this is the year to do it. There is no time to waste investing in yourself, investing in your self-love, investing in what feels good to you. Like now is the time. You only have one you. You only have one mind, one body, one soul. Why not do the things now? Why put it off? There is no need to wait till next year, till next dry January. Like let's start to do some things now that feel really, really good and authentic to you.
I think that also applies if you're starting to figure out your own queer identity as well. Like if you are still figuring it out, like all the same stuff still applies. Like how would you continue to like love yourself and figure out like just whatever your identity may be, whether that's changing or you're just coming to terms with it? How would you act if you just accepted what that was? How would you treat yourself if somebody else might be like coming out to you or trying to figure out their own sexual or gender identity or whatever that may be? How might you be able to like support them in that endeavor as well? I think
Love that.
I think another thing to also consider is like a lot of people tend to use this time to like come up with or create or like find. I say it as mantra because it comes from a Sanskrit word, two Sanskrit words that get combined. The word mantra or mantra, whatever, however you say it, is a combination of two different words. One that means mana, which means the mind, and then trayate, which means to deliver. So the word mantra actually, if you translate it from Sanskrit, is something that means to deliver the mind. And so this idea of creating or finding or like latching onto a mantra is just another way of you helping out like what's going on up here. Because it may not look the way that you think. You may not be paying attention to some of this stuff on a daily basis, but that mantra helps you remind you of that. Or it helps you like, it continues to grow and gain power basically the more that you continue to use it. And so that's something that I think that some people find very useful. So that's kind of like a little bit different than a resolution, which is more like you check the box, set it at the beginning of the year, and lots of people don't remember. It's a little bit more specific than an intention, but maybe another tool that might be useful for you for 2021 as you're kind of thinking about what we need to be doing or what you need to be doing specifically.
Yes, I love that. I love mantra. I love thinking about what you want a theme for 2021 to be, what you're like having a word or a phrase, what you were saying, Rajiv, like just holding on to that and then having that kind of guide your subconscious in the kind of goals that you end up achieving just because you have this word or phrase in the back of your mind and it's something to hold on to throughout the year. And you can even do a journaling activity with that and thinking about, hey, it's January of 2021. Here's the word that is speaking to me. And then at the end of the year, thinking about journaling again and being like, here's all the ways that this word has woven into the actions that I took this year and what I achieved. So it's really exciting. It's really fun to think of a word and to brainstorm words. So that can be a fun activity as well to get your creativity going for this year. If you are thinking more specific, resolution wise or goal wise, and you really want to start to stick to it this time, you kind of got, comfortable in 2020. I know if all you did in 2020 was survive, that's enough. That's definitely way more than enough. And if you did it sober, my hat is off to you because that was not easy. And if you're starting here with us in dry January, that's an amazing goal to have as well. But how to stick to your goals, let's say the best way to start is to start small, obviously. Like I said before, you're not going to just wave a magic wand and have everything change overnight. It starts with teeny tiny little steps of going in the right direction towards your goal. And eventually you will get there because the time will pass. The time will continue to go. It just is a matter of what little tiny baby steps you start taking towards your goal and just moving in reasonable measurement, like things that are reasonable for you. Also being realistic, just checking in with yourself, with where you're at, and making sure your goal is in alignment with being realistic to achieve, whether that's this month in dry January or this year. If you have a big giant goal, you gotta cut that up into smaller pieces, like I just said, so that you can do the staircase to get there. And making sure that your goals are able to be measurable if that speaks to you. If you want to do something specific, just, get super specific about it. Write it down. Make it known so that you can see the measurable progress being made over time. And like Rajiv said earlier, if you need a positive buddy in your life that keeps you accountable, or if you need a positive community, go out there and find it. If you always fall off the wagon because you don't have people in your corner, go put the people in your corner. It's already such a big step that you can see where your downfall is. So pad yourself up, make yourself, in a good spot so that you can succeed this year. Just going back and reflecting again, maybe what went off the rails last year when you tried to stick with your resolutions, and how can you kind of prevent that from happening again this year. You got to outsmart yourself. You got to work smarter, not harder. And then at the end of the day, if you fall off the wagon, if you aren't really making it through, if it's February and you're not exactly where you wanted to be, you know what? It's been a month. That's it. All you have to do is forgive yourself. And if you want to get back on the horse, get back on the horse and start over and just keep going, because like progress is not linear. As long as you have that goal and you know that's where you want to get to, just keep trying. That's all you got to do. Keep trying and forgive yourself when you slip and get back right on that horse. And, if your crown slips, make sure you put it right back where it belongs.
I think that that's a wonderful image to have, because whoever you are, like, again, because you are the hero of your own story, you deserve that crown. And no matter where that crown ends up falling or slipping or sitting, by the end of the year, like, it's still your crown. So just put it back up. I think one other piece of this that we should probably talk about is just the fact that 2020 was so rough that if 2021 continues to be like a good year, like a very positive, hopeful year, get the rest you need because 2020 was exhausting. Whether that be the mental rest that you need because you're not necessarily thinking about, for example, politics in the US every single day, or you're not necessarily thinking about, well, for now we still have to think about it, but eventually later in 2021, thinking about things like the pandemic or thinking about your own health and safety or the health and safety of others, that's something that might just create a little bit more space for you within your own head to be able to do the stuff that Carly was saying, starting with your small goals and being realistic and measurable. All those things take a little bit of energy. And so if you aren't like really recharged enough to be able to do that stuff, that might just feel that much harder. So don't forget to also make sure that you're taking some rest, whether that be mental or otherwise. For example, last year, I think people were just working a ton more in many cases. Companies that moved remote, you have a job and you happen to work like an office type of job, people tended to move remote, but the hours tended to increase. If you're working more of like an in-person retailer or construction or something like that type of job, like those things also increased. So those things can also just sap your physical energy as well. So don't forget to just, chill out a little bit and just recharge those physical batteries as well. And of course, all that kind of ties together, both mental and physical, to talk about just your emotional health and your emotional energy. 2020 was a lot of just like, it was just heavy, a very heavy year. And so in addition to just like mental capacity to be able to fathom the fact that we shut down the world, I think just emotionally it's just really, really trying to just see so much change and happen over the course of an entire year. So make sure to also take some rest and get yourself some space to be able to get yourself emotionally ready again for an entire year. It's a new year, full of possibilities.
I love that so much. It's super important to rest. Like you said, you can't pour from an empty cup. So just a reminder that you have to fill your own cup up first, and doing whatever that takes, figuring out what that is means to you and what that is, and doing it so that you can be there for yourself and be there to fulfill your own dreams and goals. Talking about hopes and dreams, what are your hopes and dreams for 2021, Rajiv?
I am kind of a person that doesn't have that many hopes and dreams for 2021 because, like, well, actually, I do. Never mind. You'll probably hear some for sure. Because one of the things is like I want to make sure that I'm being intentional about this year, especially since last year was a lot of like survival skills and just all right, great. I got to grab from here. I got to take from here and make sure that it makes it work. The hopes and dreams that I have this year is just that I can be intentional about it. Kind of like what we talked about before with like all these sorts of intentions and with resolutions. I think it's also important to like note that you have these hopes and dreams, but don't like feel bad about it if they don't come to pass, because hopes and dreams are definitely, the plans of mice and men are really, I forgot the phrase, shoot. But that phrase, like they don't go right. And so it just don't feel too bad if your hopes and dreams, which may be a little bit more aspirational or ethereal or less specific than some of the other stuff that we've been talking about, don't come to pass. But, that's why I want to be intentional this year. Because then I can pay attention to the things that are coming up and I can choose what I want to focus on for this year. What about you, Carly?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with what you just said. I think it's important to take stock of the past year, and you don't necessarily have to set resolutions, but you can definitely, set a mantra or set intentions like we said, and just whatever feels right to you. So just checking in and seeing what feels right, and then checking in and seeing what feels right to hope for and to dream for this year. Like last year, whatever we hoped and dreamed for in January of 2020 definitely changed as 2020 evolved and unfolded. So just, not being super rigid with it either, with your goals for this year, and being adaptable and being resilient, like I know all of you are that are listening to this. I would say there are things to be hopeful for, though, in 2021. I'm hopeful that the administration will be changing, that we'll be out with the old and in with the new, and I'm very hopeful for that to happen as soon as possible. I am also hopeful that the vaccine is out and it is getting administered into people's arms. So, round one is here, and people are getting the vaccine, which is very exciting. I didn't know that that would be happening already in January. So that gives me hope too for now.
Definitely. And thank you, Lee, in the comments. The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Thank you. Very similarly, the best laid plans of a podcaster trying to say a phrase often go very awry. I think one other thing that I'm at least hoping for is that in 2020, because people have been very intentional, because we were having to actually look at each other and recognize the fact that there is actually another human being on the other side of many of our interactions, that the 2021 means that we're just getting into that habit and being a little bit more authentic with the interactions we have with other people or with ourselves, or authentic in terms of just the decisions that we make as well. So for example, authenticity kind of has a sort of negative vibe to it if you kind of take it into travel and international stuff and finding quote unquote authentic things. But that's not the authenticity that I'm really talking about. I'm talking about just are you as a human being being true to yourself, or are you trying to put up an image or put up a front? That's my hope and dream, is that people kind of ignore the fact that they have to have these images, or ignore the fact that they really have to have this sort of really just vibe that they have to have, feel like they have to have, and instead just kind of vibe with themselves and have their own place.
Totally. I mean, if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that whatever your plans are, the world does not care, and you just got to do you. I mean, there is no better time to figure yourself out, to play around with what feels good, do that self-discovery, and I think that going inwards can be a fun journey, and you can continue it over into 2021, and I'm hopeful that there will continue to be more self-discovery within yourself, whether that has to do with you on a sober journey or a queer journey or whatever journey you are on. To be able to discover what authentic means to you, you first have to discover yourself so that you know what is genuine, and just trying on different things, trying on different hats, different pronouns, different identities, and seeing, hey, does this feel good? Does this fit? Do I have a safe community in which I can try this on with, and just really, really play with it and have a good time? Because I'm all about taking that negative energy that 2020 has left us with and just bursting into 2021 with joy and playing and having fun.
Absolutely. I think one of the other hopes and dreams that I have, kind of similar to being authentic and kind of similar to figuring out yourself, is that as a result of that, people actually have some personal growth. That would be amazing, where a lot of the introspection, a lot of the things that people have maybe set up from 2020 take take root in 2021, and like you become maybe a whole new person, or the person you were meant to be, or the person you've been trying to change to be, like all those sorts of things, whatever that might look like for yourself, just like you are able to grow and change and continue to like evolve throughout this entire year. That's something that I really, really hope for all of you, for all of us, like for everybody.
Yes, we are speaking it into existence right now. You're reminding me of that quote of when you're in a dark place, that actually you've been planted as a seed and you're ready to burst out of the soil and grow and be who you're supposed to be. So I think 2020 was definitely our dark space, but we were a seed this whole time. And kind of back to that mindset that I talked about in a previous episode about how this is our space to kind of, turn from the caterpillar into the beautiful butterfly, but you have to carve that space for yourself. That space is not just going to appear. You have to set boundaries with people. You have to make appointments with yourself on your calendar, like for your goals. Like it could just say like goal time that you set aside for yourself, and you know what you're going to be working on during that time because you've already figured out what you want to accomplish this year. So just carving out that space, making it super intentional. The goals are not going to achieve themselves, but you have every single tool inside of you and the ability to make it happen. So why not just give yourself that space to just let it flow and let it come to you, let it happen, make it happen. So that's what I'm most excited for 2021. Just this new, fresh space. It's an unwritten book, and we get to be the author of every page.
To be even more literary and like poetic, if we are kind of in coming out of that dark space, much like the untouched snows of January and February, like it may not be until that time frame, like February or March, where you start poking yourself out of the snow and starting to grow into whatever it is that you're trying to grow into. So that is at least our hopes and dreams for all of you and for all of us. May that actually come to pass. But in the meantime, we got to wrap up this episode. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one as it comes out, because we try to launch a new episode every other week.
You can find our podcast on all major platforms, and the video podcast lives on twitch.tv and YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Chicago Queer Sober Social, and you can contact us at queersobersocial@gmail.com or leave us a voice message on our Anchor page with any questions or stories you'd like to share with us. I also have one special announcement. If you haven't already claimed your ticket to Sober Voices, which is going to be this amazing sober summit online, all virtual. It's February 2nd through the 4th. There's going to be amazing speakers, and I am proudly moderating the LGBTQIA panel, which is going to be about how to find love and sex while you are queer and sober. So obviously a very hot topic. I'm super excited. So if you are interested, we will post the link to get a ticket in our show notes. So definitely check that out. And thank you so, so much for being here. Thank you for listening to the Queer Sober Social podcast. And always, always remember,
you are queer enough.
You are sober enough.
You are enough. Well, thank you again very much for kind of like a feel-good typey episode. We hope that you do. We definitely needed it. Like good, refreshing energy for the start to 2021. If you want to stick around for a little bit, we're going to take a bit of a break, and then we'll be right back for the after show. So you can also enjoy some new graphics that we whipped up just to kind of like mark the after show, which, by the way, is always exclusive to Twitch and to YouTube. So be right back. Alrighty, everybody. Hello. Welcome back. I hope that everybody had a nice break. We were just kind of chatting behind the scenes and kind of thinking through like, what is it really that 2020 is able to give us this year, and how does it really compare to some years past? For example, 2020.
Yes. Well, first, I would love to know, Rajiv, have you set any resolutions for yourself or mantras or intentions for 2021 so far?
I haven't really. I've kind of like continued to have sort of like themes that continue to pass forward from like I'm like I think the first year that I actually set something like that was in 2016. And it's just the same sort of stuff that's been continuing. It just kind of takes different shapes and forms. Um, in 2016 at least, or like those three themes are around finances, because in 2016 I was still paying off student loans, and now in 2021 I'm still paying off student loans. So, it continues for some time. The second thing that I had was around fitness. So like at the time I was just figuring out like, did I want to have a lifting program or go to the gym more often or what I really wanted to do. And then in 2021, I have like these different ideas. I have a different program. I have different goals. I have different reasons even for like doing half of this stuff. But still, the goal is still around like just how do I keep up and keep myself just healthy, whether in some sort of physical way. And then finally, my last thing was around language. So in 2016, I was kind of focusing on um, learning Spanish, and at the time, actually in 2016, I was living in China, so learning Chinese. So both of those were really focused languages at the time. I'm certainly not fluent, and so I haven't really kept up with all of that stuff as much as I really like to. But even in 2021, I think language is a key thing where I'm pushing more on the Spanish side of things, and rather than like Chinese or Hindi, for example, which is another language that I've been trying to learn. Because languages are hard, y'all. Like, once you get past the hello, goodbye, like the pleasantries and things like that, to be able to express yourself is so difficult. At the same time, like once you get to a certain level, language just becomes like really, really boring because it's like it becomes part of your life again. And like the conversations that you might have been like, oh man, what are they saying? That's really cool. Become like, oh yeah, well I went to have dinner with Joe last night, and I like went down the street and got this new thing, and I'm like, oh. They're still very normal conversations. But what about you, Carly? Like, have you said anything for 2021 specifically?
I really like how you have your buckets of goals. Like you're like, okay, this is going to be finances, this is going to be fitness, this is going to be educational or language. And you reminded me of that quote or that, I don't know, saying that's like, find a hobby that like stimulates your mind, stimulates your body, and stimulates or makes you money or something. So like that's kind of three things that you, I don't know, three different things that you could like focus on. But I like how you have those three and then you can kind of like tweak the goals that go within each of those buckets. I think that's pretty cool. And you get to see like how you evolve each year and just like keep building on those things. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't have to, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here with your resolutions. Like it could just be building out what you've already created. So I like what you said. This year, I think my biggest resolution was, or not resolution, but I like more of intentions. And my intention was to not be so hard on yourself.
Mm.
Not be so hard on myself. Yeah, and just like not being afraid and like feeling the fear and doing it anyway and being willing to put myself out there in new ways. So that's kind of more of my intention. So I think I'm fulfilling that by being on this podcast and by running our community that we do and exploring the different ways that we want to expand our community and the ways that we want to bring it into 2021 and expand it. So I'm excited for all that. And yeah, it's interesting to think about, you can kind of carry over resolutions too.
Right.
Like when I'm looking at past years and I'm like, oh, well, didn't get to that one. It's not, you don't have to beat yourself up. You're just like, okay, how can I try to incorporate some of those old goals? Because that's still part of me. It's still something that I wanted to achieve in the past. The time maybe just wasn't right, or I didn't really necessarily put focus on that. So I think one thing I've always really wanted to do is like in terms of self-discovery, which I know we talked about on the podcast, is play around with my wardrobe. and
Mm-hmm.
fashion and figure out my style or how I want to present myself in the world. So kind of just like playing around with that, I think was is something that's fun that's always kind of been on my resolutions, but I've never really fully evolved into this is me, this is my style. I know this aspect of myself really well. So aspire to do that this year.
I definitely resonate with stuff like that because I do know I remember like specifically 2018 or so I think was my year of like finding my own signature scent of sort of things. Like I was doing a whole set of explorations around cologne specifically,
Mm,
just to be like, all right, well, what is it that I'm trying to communicate to the world through the power of scent? And like a neutral scent also communicates something of just like a lack, like invisibility in a lot of ways, but
yep.
maybe something for like a different season or a different time of day, that kind of thing. Like those are the sorts of things that I was thinking through in 2018, which 100% I think matches your whole exploration with fashion and your own like presentation of yourself. Because like that also is a really cool thing to kind of think about, like how, especially also as societal trends change, I think that also influences just what you feel more and more comfortable or feel like you can do. That stuff also changes at the same time.
Definitely. I think that's like kind of more of the fun side of the self-discovery and like why can't you just have a fun time? Like
Hmm.
there's no laws against like having a good time while you're like achieving your resolutions or things like that. Um yeah, so that's really cool. I think that's hearing about your cologne journey, but I think you can really dip into like all of the senses. Like, okay, so
Right.
mine was kind of like how do I want to present myself in my look?
Hmm.
How do you want to smell?
How
Like
do you want to taste?
no, I guess like what kind of foods do you want to taste? Like what kind
Okay,
of
yeah, okay,
diet
that's
do
a
you want
better way to do it. Yeah.
to what kind of diet do you want to have this year? Like in terms of touch, maybe like what I don't know, like tangible, like how do you want your space around you to be? How like do you want it to be organized? Do you want it to have a certain look? Or like what kind of like objects do you want to
Yep.
own? Or like kind of, routines or yeah, like what goes along with the habits that you want to create? Do you need to get like an at-home gym thing or do you need to get like essential oils or like whatever is your theme is self-care. So just like what goes along with that with all your senses as well. Like
Could you
what do
tell?
you listen to? Yeah, music-wise too. So just I think you can really pick apart all the senses.
You can definitely pick up all the senses. Um, there are more than five, by the way, in case people, that's the controversial topic of the day, I guess.
We
Is there
love
are technically more than
controversy.
five? Because, like, all right, temperature, is that like lumped into feeling? Technically a different sense. The sense of vibration, like, is that technically touch or not? Like, that's a different sensation. I'm sure you could be creative and figure out some
Totally.
opportunities for you to play around with those senses as well.
Yeah, I love this. I love how deep and creative you can get in your own journey. It just accesses different parts of your mind once you start getting the ball rolling of like, okay, and start visualizing, like visualizing is so underrated and like having there's like meditation, but there's also like visualization that you can do when you're really relaxed. And that is just like, it's basically like daydreaming, but your subconscious is just like soaking in everything that you want. And then it just subtly finds ways in your everyday life to create the things that you want. So just really getting serious about having fun and about having like a good time getting what you want, I think is a
I,
good intention for 2021.
it may sound silly, but like you should be serious about having fun. Because like if you don't create the space for it or if you don't like actively try to find it, like good luck. Like some people are lackadaisical and they can kind of like make it happen. I'm not one of those people, so I have to be pretty intentional about it. But so I'm very serious about having fun.
Yes. Well, I think as adults too, we kind of lose that childhood
Mm.
essence and just like that relaxedness. We get very serious. The world hardens us, especially living in a big city. Like you get tough. You have this tough exterior and you deep down, you have this like innate knowing how to play and how to be silly and have fun. And it's like, I think intentions and like the new year is a really great way to access that part of yourself and to just like have a good time. Like nothing's really that serious. It's only as serious as you make it.
Well, speaking of serious or not serious things, do you want to share a little bit about what your fashion journey is actually looking like?
Fashion journey? Um, let's see. Well, I think if anything I learned from 2020, it's how I want to be intentional about where I spend my money and how I
Mm,
spend my money and where I shop. So I think that's kind of going back to your cologne journey of I get to do this fun research of
yeah.
the places that I want to find clothes from and where my clothes come from and just like, being more educated about that because I've seen some shocking information about the fashion industry, fast fashion, and how much of these like cheap clothes end up in our landfills, and that's not good for the environment. So, just like you can have my one fashion journey is taking me on this whole new educational journey now and like learning about minimalism and how to build a wardrobe with like smart basics that you can like get creative with swapping out like different pieces of your wardrobe. So I think I'm going in that more of a direction of how do I get like quality versatile pieces that I don't need to own a lot of clothes, but the clothes that I have are good quality and coming from good places that care about sustainability.
And here you were, I think it was literally last episode, kind of making fun of me for having sort of a set of basics and things like that.
Okay, don't quote
How
me on that.
how
See,
the
all has
time
evolved.
like
All
tables
has
have
evolved
turned.
in 2021. Look at us. Look at us changing. 9 days in, we're new people.
Right.
Just kidding.
Lee in chat is saying that I think tapping into the childhood spontaneity can be a goal for the new year as well. Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that should be a forever goal. Like it is the you don't grow up, you choose to grow up type of thing. And so there are certain ways that you should definitely be an adult, like please. But there are other ways where you should never really lose that childhood, like childlike wonder. Like this is a really weird thing for me at least, but every time I get into a plane and like we like get up above the clouds and stuff like that, that always is still like it's still new to me. I still like it. And I think in not in 2020, but in not 2019 or 18 either. Oh shoot, let's see, 2017. I spent I think more than half of the year like somewhere else outside of Chicago. And I think I took like at least 100 or 200 flights. So
Wow.
there were a lot of times where we went above those clouds, but it still is like something that's really nice and something that you can kind of keep forever, in whatever way or shape or form that shows up, whether that be in fashion or sense or you know sitting on an airplane hoping to get somewhere. I think that
Yeah, I
that's a
love
nice way.
that. The clouds are so cool every time. I love like that just goes back to being mindful of your surroundings and what brings you joy and what makes you feel like a kid again.
Mhm.
You reminded me of another goal that's I think really easy to do right now with the pandemic still going on for this year, and that's to get serious about your sleep hygiene. That's another one of my personal goals that yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure we talked about that because sleep is so important. And
How
we
much
are in this
time do you have? I have so much to talk about sleep.
we live in this society that tells us that like not sleeping is a badge of honor, but we also live in that same society that teaches us that hangovers are a badge of honor. And I used to wear my hangovers very proudly and my lack of sleep so proudly. And it's like, no, no, no. We are prioritizing all the wrong things. And that's why we're out here trying to tell you, like, don't listen to society because they got it all wrong. All wrong.
Here we
Sleep
are
is
being queer, we're being sober. Society doesn't tell you to do any of those things. Get 8 hours of sleep, like none of that.
right? Okay, like once you get sober, sleep is like it's a game changer because I didn't really start sleeping until I got sober for real because you actually get to sleep because of how much alcohol messes up your ability to go into REM sleep. And then
Mhm.
when you take that out of the equation, you're like, I don't know what I was doing before this. I definitely wasn't sleeping. I was like half awake. And now, now that I can sleep so soundly, I like do everything I can to like soak in every second of sleep that I possibly can. And it changes everything. It changes your mental health. It changes the way that you feel. It changes the way that you eat, that you can work out, that you can just like be cognitively functioning, remember things. Like I could go on forever. But yes, sleep hygiene is something that I think a lot of people might have fallen off with in 2020, but it's very easy to get back on a schedule. Even though you might not have anywhere to physically go to get up to go to, you could still set your alarm. It still feels good to like get yourself on a schedule and, okay, so you wake up and now find other good things that make you feel good in the morning that you want to do. Now that you have the time to do it and that you're setting yourself up for success for the day, like why not change your life? Why not do it this year? We're here for it.
And there are like tons of resources for you just out there that can be free, some can be paid, some can be like with other people, some can be alone. Back in grad school, I was part of a research study that was doing some research into there's a therapy that's called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, but specific to insomnia. So CBTI is the official like term for it. There's an app out there that you could use that I think is made by Stanford Medicine or something like that, that you could just like pull up and get to learn some of those techniques. So if you're not familiar with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it has two pieces of it. One is on like the cognition side of things, which is like, what are you thinking about? Like, how do you think about sleep? What attitudes do you have towards sleep? Do you believe that if you get like 7 hours of sleep versus 8, you're gonna like fall apart in the morning? Like, probably not. There's also behaviors. So exactly what Carly's talking about. So like, are you setting a schedule? Are you not? If you still drink alcohol or some sort of thing, like are you drinking alcohol really late? Or caffeine, for example, like that's a really common thing for people to drink super late as well. That 3:30 coffee might actually come back to bite you at like 10 o'clock or 11 when you're trying to go to bed. And so on both sides, the cognitive and the behavioral side of things, you can kind of think through, can create places and spaces for you to just be better at sleep, just because there's so many benefits. And honestly, like it requires a little bit of you just knowing yourself to know just like how does sleep work for you specifically, not necessarily for everybody else, but like let's be intentional about even just how you're thinking about sleep.
Totally. And then, I mean, that goes back to screen time, which I think is another one of my goals for this year. My screen time in 2020 was where it needed to be to survive 2020.
It's a very nice way to put it.
I'm just going to leave it at that. If my screen time was a minute less, I don't know if I would have made it. But, that's where we go back to what we said in the podcast. We forgive ourselves. We forgive ourselves for the screen time that we spent in 2020. And if that's a goal for yourself to reduce your screen time, because it can help you to relax so much more before you go to bed because you're not looking at, lights and lasers going into your face before you try and like drift off into unconsciousness. But, my personal goal is, to just be more mindful of my screen time and not beat myself up and just be aware. And there's so many, like you said, there's so many tools for that goal as well that are on your phone or on your computer that you can set limits within apps. You can set limits within your phone to like go on to night mode at a certain time, to remind you to go to bed, to be like, hey, you said you needed 30 minutes before bed to like go get ready and like not be on your phone, so I'm gonna shut down now. And you're like, no. Yeah, you can kind of booby trap yourself into making your goals work for you. So I think if we're gonna talk about sleep, we definitely gotta talk about screen time for me personally.
Absolutely. I think I spend way too much time on screens. I don't care what the activity and like thing said. I don't care what 2020 was like. I still feel like it was a lot. Sometimes like I would switch directly from work and then go back to screen time from like personal stuff. And I think that's partially, I blame the pandemic partially for that, because not being able to leave your house and still wanting to be like entertained and create things or like do things many times a day today requires some screen of some sort. And so unfortunately, as a necessary evil in some cases, just being able to do some stuff to like get you through, like fine. But I still think it was a lot. And how am I thinking about other ways of doing it, or like other spaces that I can like inhabit that don't necessarily have so much screen time, or maybe not use a screen for certain things? Like if you're listening to this podcast, well, this part is just live to video, so hello screen watchers. But if you're listening to the podcast, maybe you could just do that while you're doing something else, and maybe not watch the video podcast. Whatever way you decide to interact with our group, like cool. as long as you're interacting with us, I'm all game for that. But I think that that's definitely really important. Is kind of thinking through like where do you want to maybe make some changes, especially with screen time, because that's a huge deal right now.
Yeah, and just like you said, just okay, if that's your goal, just trying to, be gentle with yourself, see, and your phone will tell you. It tells you. It tells you where you go. It tells you how long you go there for. So, I mean, some of these it's hard facts to face, and if you have anxiety thinking about looking at your like screen time totals and like what your phone is like going to straight up data tell you, maybe that's a sign that this is something that you might want to work on for this year. And it kind of goes back to like if you are one of those people that looks at your bank app like this, like with through your fingers, like you're too afraid to even look at it, maybe that's a sign to you that maybe this year you want to be able to sit down with your finances and do something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, because definitely our phone is a luxury, our phone is a security blanket, and being without it is anxiety producing. It can be because we've gotten so used to it as a crutch, and going without it, just doing like little challenges like, hey, can I go on a walk and leave my phone at home or something?
Mm.
Just making it fun, like adding that like playful aspect back to it. Like, hey, what's something like I could trade the screen time where I'm looking at nothing and my eyes are glazing over to something where I'm doing a puzzle or I'm drawing or I'm doing something with my hands that's like more exciting than even what I was doing with my phone anyway. So just swapping one thing for something that's slightly better or that feels better.
100% agree. Like for example, a lot of people are trying to learn how to cook because maybe for the first time they're stuck at home and have to fend for themselves, or like they're finding it's a more economical way or a healthier way or just a different way of living their lives. Um, that's a really, I mean, to the point about using your hands, like that's a really, really useful thing to learn, and maybe do. And that doesn't necessarily require any screens. Plus, it can be fun and tasty and help you out like for leftovers for the next day or two or whatever. I think it's that's one of the ways that I've been at least trying to swap out screen time is figuring out more ways that I can try to like cook.
I like that a lot. That's really cool. And that can also like help you with your other goals if you wanted to, eat more plant-based or eat more protein or whatever your food goals are. Like if you are in control of what you're cooking, then you're in control of what you're ingesting. So yeah, it's been a really interesting year. I think last year made me realize how often I was eating out and then like how large my portions were when I was eating out, because you're not really thinking about being super, I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about being super mindful when I was eating out. It was more just like I'm on the go. I'm so busy. Like let me just shove this food in my face so I can just like keep going. And this year like in 2020 it just really forced you to like slow down and you're not on the go as much and I'm home more, and so I'm just so much more cognizant of what I'm doing and I can plan and I know like okay, it's going to take me 30 minutes to cook this, so like let me backtrack and start it at this time. So just, you know, it's a totally different playing field than like, oh shoot, I'm late for a meeting in 5 minutes. Now let me go run out to this like fast food place, like, and just like get some fuel. So being intentional and mindful, like you said, that's a really good goal for this year too, to up your food game, up your cooking game. That's fun.
Yeah. And let's say that you have to eat out. Like I 100% understand that. I traveled for work and will continue to travel once this opens up again, potentially. Uh, you can't exactly cook in a hotel room, so I totally get that. Or as you're like in an unfamiliar space, but you can still be intentional about like what you choose to eat, even if you are eating out. Maybe you don't go for like the extra fries or like the really tasty thing, which it's super good. I like I'm totally with you there. But like day six of eating it in a row, like sometimes is not the best thing. Um, or maybe you can kind of choose like when you want to get your like cheat day in or whatever that may be, especially if you're like doing a workout type diet. That or if you're even doing a diet at all, like just maybe just being more thoughtful about thinking through exactly what you're doing before you make that same choice. That's also totally cool. But you can up your food game in many different ways, whether that's like at home and cooking it, which is awesome because like there's so many things that you can do, and I'm all for it. But you can also up your like choices game as you're eating out. Maybe try a new place. Like that's one option. Maybe try a place that's known for different options or things that you've been meaning to try. New cuisines is an awesome way to up your food game. I highly recommend exploring Malaysian food if you've never tried that before. Of course, there's the usual staples of, Thai, Indian, Chinese, like Mexican or South American in general, like American, Japanese, like whatever, Italian. There are other countries out there, and they have some interesting food out there as well.
Oh, yeah. This sounds so like fun to explore and like, okay, maybe we can't necessarily travel this year or travel right now, but you can allow your palate to travel the world and have a new experience. And our palates do change over time. And if there's
Mhm.
like a food that you were really averse to back in the day, like just circle back to that. It's the year of just trying new things. And you know what? If you hate it, that's fine. But at least you tested it out because our palates are forever changing and it takes like many times to try certain foods for you to once become liking to them. So it's always about that exploration that's got to be like implemented to expand your palate and expand what's possible for you in your food life, your
I,
food journey.
I a million percent agree. I'm trying to like think through how many foods I really did not like a few years ago, and now that I kind of like am okay with, but maybe not like added to my regular cuisine, but it's still a lot better than just completely ignoring it. However, there is one thing that I will never ever come around to. And for me,
What is
that's
that?
papaya. That's papaya. Like I cannot stand the fruit. Green
I thought you were
papaya?
gonna say durian.
Cool. Durian, actually, I don't like durian either, but like I think that's a really common thing for people to not like. Durian, jackfruit, like that family of fruits. If you've never had it, it is not great in both texture, smell, and taste. So that kind of makes up all of food. So for me, that's a no from me, dog. Are there any foods for like that for you, Carly, that you're like, no way, I've tried it a million times and I'm out? Because like even though we're talking a lot about like intentions and making changes and stuff like that, there are things that you probably want to keep the same.
Yeah, for sure. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like if you already know what's working for your life, keep that going, but just like fine tuning the things
Right.
that you want to make a little bit better. I'm a pretty big foodie. I'll eat pretty much anything. Um, yeah, I don't know. Probably I think I want to be more adventurous this year too. So I don't know.
Mm.
I've never had durian, but I'm not keen on it after this conversation or any conversation I've ever had about it.
Some
But
people
you know
love
what?
it. Like go to
I want
dim
to go
sum
back.
place or something and then just find like a durian pastry or whatever there is. Like that's an easy like durian 101 type of thing instead of having the straight up fruit.
Love it. Love that. Yeah. You made me think about going back to cooking and stuff. Like for me, cooking is super meditative. Like when I'm
Hmm.
chopping, like you just get in the zone. Like it's so fun and you can put on whatever music you
Mm-hmm.
want or podcast and just like make it what you want it to be. So you're making me think about all these things that I want to make or like trying new techniques and like why not up your like recipe game and the things that you can make because that is pretty freaking cool to like come out of this and be like, yeah, I'm a baller at making XYZ.
What is your intention? What is your
Ooh.
mantra for like
Okay.
2021 food?
That's a good one. I don't know if I have a mantra, but I really want to make pasta from scratch, and it's been a long
Mm.
time since I've done that. So yeah, like ravioli maybe, where you like have a filling and you like press down the sides,
Oh
like very
man,
like eat
like
pray, very
I'm
eat pray
hungry
love
now again.
moment. You asked, so
No,
that's
it
all
is
you.
definitely my fault, but still, like that's a really cool goal.
Thank you. What about you? Or
I
does it have
have
to be food related?
Well, I mean, I do have a couple goals like food related. I have been diving a little bit more into East Asian cuisine, but like
Mm.
actual East Asian cuisine, because like American Chinese food is good, it's tasty, it's nice, but like it's not what I had when I was in China.
Got
And I
it.
would like to like learn some of that stuff a little bit more. Like I've learned some of it, but I think that that's an opportunity for me to learn more about that. Or like within Japanese cuisine or other types of cuisine, I happen to be a vegetarian, and so like how do I adapt some of that stuff where it looks really cool, I really want to have it, but it isn't something that I would prefer to eat. How do I make a version that works for me? And whether that you have a dietary restriction or like you're making choices about what type of food that you're eating, like you can also maybe make some of those tweaks and see what works for you within those types of cuisines. So for me, it's been just like a lot of East Asian, actually Southeast Asian included, types of cuisines because they have a lot of flavors that come from India, which is my ethnic background, but they're just kind of like done differently.
That sounds amazing, and it's also making me hungry as well.
Well, once this pandemic ends, like come on over. Like we're both in Chicago, so
Yes, I definitely will. That sounds delicious. Yum. All right, well, we definitely have covered food and we've covered fashion, fitness, all kinds of sleep,
what are F words should we talk about?
finances. We did talk about
we
that too.
we definitely did.
Fun.
Fun. Fill in the blanks
Um,
here. Like
films. I don't know. You maybe now. I did make a list at the beginning of the pandemic of kind of classic films that I had never seen that everybody
oh
talks
yeah.
about.
Like what are some on
That
your list? Because I definitely haven't made that list, but I know that there's a lot on that list.
Okay, I've never seen The Godfather, and I get a
Me
lot
neither.
of slack for that. All
I'm
right,
sorry
thank
anybody
you.
who like is angry already by watching this.
Um, just like oldies, I feel like things that came out maybe like when I was younger that I was, I was a kid and it was an adult movie, so I need to like go back and re-educate myself on what came out when, I was alive, but
Hmm.
not actually like suitable to watch, or even things that like you do watch when you're a kid, but then when you watch it when you're older, you're like, this is a
Uh,
totally different movie.
yeah.
So very that. I've also just been watching a lot of things that I've already seen because I don't know. It feels safe. I already know what's gonna happen. I don't have to like have stress or anxiety. So anything like happy or musicals has been what I've been watching as of late. But I do have quite a lengthy list of the classics that I want to educate myself on.
Two things. One, Lee in the comments says, Carly, I know how to do this. Making ravioli and pasta is fun.
Yay! Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I mean, for sure. Again, the
Can't
world
wait.
just needs to open up again. We're just like waiting on that vaccine, like come summer, and then we'll be ready to go and make pasta, make these like fancy cuisines, watch
Yes.
movies together, whatever that may be.
Yes, have a really, really fancy potluck.
Right.
So fun.
There was so as a result of Schitt's Creek, like watching that whole series, I decided to find and watch Cabaret, like as the musical, which I thought was like a super fun thing to do. Also, really timely message. Interestingly enough, I won't spoil things because like it's really predicated upon like you not having seen it before. But it's it's been a nice way to like see things that again like sure I have never seen before or that people always are saying are classics or something like that and that I just never got around to that
Right,
yeah
exactly.
takes on new meaning especially when you watch it now whatever that may be.
Right? You know what too has been on my like mental list? So I love A Star is Born with
Mm-hmm.
Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, but there's like three past versions that that movie is based off of with older cast, obviously. So I'm like, I need to go back and watch the originals that sparked the remakes that I love so much. So I really want to go back and watch some of those good ones too. Oldies but goodies.
Oldies but goodies. Yeah. Lee in the comments says hit me up for pasta making. Definitely.
Really. Pasta making.
Pasta making for sure.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. What else? Yeah, so film, that's pretty cool. Yeah, just going back to things that maybe, back in winter pandemic mode of last year and then summer came and, some of those things kind of fell by the wayside. Like I have two puzzles here that I have not yet attempted to complete. I completed one puzzle, so proud of that. It was 2,000 pieces, so that was pretty large goal to complete. But
Well
that was
done, well done. I
early
went
pandemic.
in early pandemic. I helped my sister and my mother finish a puzzle. They live in the suburbs of Chicago, and I feel like I did half of it because like I for some reason could see some of the puzzle pieces a little bit faster than they could. But definitely, at some point they gave up and I didn't give up because like I would come home every few weeks or something like that just to say hi, and then I would continue on the puzzle. So if you break it into little pieces, maybe 2,000 pieces, Carly, you too can actually finish your puzzle.
Puzzle is a metaphor for your goals. Just break your goals down into 2,000 tiny pieces and put them together piece
and,
by piece
and then
every
when
time
you
that you go home to the suburbs. I'm just kidding.
and then every time you're making a curtain that is all the same color, like you can just curse yourself for having too many things that just don't fit together.
Oh man.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, do you have any musical journey that you're on? Like similar to film, where you're kind of like doing oldies but goodies, but like music that you're trying to explore? It's super important to me, like music in general, so that's why I've been doing a lot of exploration.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I have been doing another deep dive into the nostalgia with my music and have been listening to a lot of like 90s and 2000s R&B and rap and even pop too, just take me to a different time that isn't right now's time. But being able to like see what was really popular back in the day and be like following these like older, I mean, okay, you can even go back to like the 80s and 70s and 60s, like these artists, like who were the top artists at the time and kind of like following their
Mm-hmm.
discography and like, okay, maybe I know the hit song, but like maybe like let me do a deeper dive into some of their like lesser known hits. Like let me listen to the full album, like let me get the full experience, like as if I was in this time at the time, like how I would have listened to it then if
For
I had
sure.
a record player or a 8-track or a CD, whatever, a tape, a cassette player, like thankfully because of the magic of technology it's all on Spotify for me, so it's why not take advantage of your tools that you can use with the internet, everything being online, so
For sure.
might as well. What about
Absolutely.
you?
I'm definitely like diving a little bit deeper into different types of like mishmashes of genres because that's like becoming the thing.
Yeah.
Um, and like finding things that I didn't think would work together, but somebody has made it work. I've also been doing a little bit of just like creating my own music, of like recreating things and then kind of seeing like, can I find that same sort of soundscape or sound palette or like that same texture? It's a very like synesthetic way of saying it, but I think if you know, you know. Like when you're talking
For
about like
sure.
a type of sound that just like hits your ear that way, can I find it? And or like can I recreate something that is like an earworm and that like that same 6 seconds that I've always been thinking about? Like can I figure out maybe what that is? So sorts of like deconstructing some stuff. That's the kind of journey that I've been on. So finding new stuff, finding old stuff, finding um, old stuff that was ahead of their time, and like finding things that actually would work
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Finding stuff that came out like just recently that don't work anymore, like that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Both in every direction. Really been looking at that.
That's super cool. I really like that a lot. You're making me think about my musical journey. You're also making me think about my literary journey. I have made a goal to read. Okay, I have a book buying problem, so in order to be able to purchase more books, I have to read at least. I have a one in, one out program with myself.
Okay,
If I read one book on my shelf, I can buy another book. And I have so many unread books on my bookshelf that are still unread to this day. So I am thinking more consciously about what I'm reading and what I want to be reading. And a theme that emerged from 2020 has been doing like anti-racist
mm,
literature and informing myself on issues. So I've been reading a lot of those types of books, but also, sprinkling in the fun books that I also have sitting on my bookshelf that interests me as well, whether that's Quit Lit or it's therapy books or psychology, stuff like that. So, doing an educational piece and informing myself at the same time while having fun while reading.
so in the chat we have somebody new. Hi, the mini mystique. They say, oh, why is the username pink, or is this random or gendered? I'm pretty sure it's pretty random. So sorry if the color isn't working. I actually don't know how to change it, but it's the same for everybody. So hopefully that shouldn't make anybody any different than anybody else. But welcome. Welcome to the stream, and also welcome to this after show after our Queer Sober Social podcast. Alrighty. Well, so yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, if you wanted to, are you having any literary journeys that you would like to share about or achieve?
Oh, it is. Oh, by the way, the mini mystique is Katie. So hi, Katie.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome. I have not really been going down a literary journey, just because like I feel like I'm not somebody who finds books in that way. Like that is the way that I consume media. Like I will read. Give me a long form article, like 100% for it. Give me like research papers or stuff like that. I'm here for it. But like nobody ever would like want to suggest that. So for the normal audience of people, no, I am not going down a literary journey.
Well, it is an option for this year, so we are talking
is
about all
definitely.
forms of media. So
I did
definitely.
a little bit in the past year, and I think I just never really was able to keep up with it and stick with it. It's probably because of just some of the way that I kind of consume book content or literary content in the first place. Like I have a Kindle, which is nice, and it's I don't have to have a one in one out type of policy because as long as the storage is there, I can kind of like squeeze it in. But
Yes.
it's still a little bit different than having a book, like the physical feeling of a book to open up and like get
Right.
to a random page, or like the weightiness kind of change as you get further
Yeah.
along, like all of that.
Flipping the
Right,
page
right,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. You've made me think about how so many things are online now because of
Hmm.
the pandemic, that if there's like been a topic that you've been interested in, or like you said, like if you want to read stuff, that you can like link up with your library and get virtual books. You can
That's
get
right.
virtual courses, like virtual access to, well, kind of what you were saying before, like volunteering at places and just so doing it in a safe way, but doing it in a way where maybe you would have never had the opportunity to connect with certain places or people or things until now. So the world really is at your fingertips, and having that fun exploration with like, okay, this is my goal. How do I want to do things with that align with it? And just like doing that fun research and like seeing what comes up.
Also, yes, absolutely, because you can find ways to like have it to engage and like find things that may not have been possible in the past, and then all of a sudden everybody had to switch everything online. So that's definitely an awesome way to be able to find some new stuff. I also just realized that it's them and in Mystique. Sorry, Katie. I couldn't like get it right in my head. And Carly, if you have a good used bookstore, you can literally swap them or have old books pay for old ones.
Ooh, that's a fantastic idea.
Also, if you happen to have like a membership at the library, some of them do have Kindle like library systems or something like that. So even if you don't have a
Yeah.
physical book, you can actually rent a library book from a library through your reading device of some sort, whether that be a Kindle or online or some sort of app or something like that.
Yes. I love it. So many great things. I am looking back at, so I have my old list of resolutions that I've made on my phone, and I just been
Mm.
looking at them for fun. And there for a long time my resolution was, I mean, it still is every year, obviously, to stay sober, but before I was sober, every January 1st, I would be like, okay, this is gonna be the year. This
Oh
is
no.
it. So I mean, I know I'm not alone in that, okay, I didn't get to it last year maybe, and I'm just gonna throw it on this year. So that was kind of my mentality, every year. And so I mean, subconsciously I knew if I was adding it to my list, but yeah, I'm glad that now my resolution can be continue to stay sober or continue to do things that support my sobriety. So that's an only constant that I'm seeing here so far.
For sure. Katie says Libby is a great app, and I assume that's one that you could actually like borrow books from or do something like that on. Okay. Um,
Very cool.
some of my coworkers have been like suggesting books here and there, um, but like Like, do you have any others, like for our listeners or watchers, that might be some book that you might suggest specifically?
Ooh, I mean, for
I have
what
no idea.
reason?
Like whatever,
What
something.
category?
Carly's recommended books. Like one of Carly's recommended.
There's the book "Quit Like a Woman" by Holly Whitaker. That's like number one quit lit. Probably my number two quit lit is "We Are the Luckiest" by Laura McCowan. So those are two of my like sober heroines, and I would not be sober if those two did not be so open about their sobriety.
Mm.
There's so many other sober books, so many other sober memoirs that are out there. A book that really helped with my queer identity was The Ethical Slut,
Oh
and
yeah,
I really
sure.
enjoyed that book. Yeah, that was great. There's other really great books. Come As You Are
Hmm.
is a really good one as well. Oh, there's so many. What about you, Rajiv? I know you just said you don't really read too many, but you've had some recommended too, so maybe
I
this
have definitely
will
had
help
people
here.
recommend some stuff, like more than one, for example, if we're going like the polyamory type of route of things.
Yeah.
Actually, it doesn't even matter if you're polyamorous or not. Like, truly, it's just around like what is a relationship and how do you interact with one or more people at the other end of the relationship. I think it's still useful for stuff like that. Um, I have definitely heard recommendations. Well, I mean, um, I don't like I don't use the label sober. I just functionally am sober. So Quitlet is not something that I have a particular need for. Unfortunately, I don't have any recommendations there. However, Feminine Mystique coming in to save me. The Vanishing Half is amazing fiction with family drama, spans generations, etc., but so interesting and unexpected. Trans person of color character in the 1960s. I think that's a
Ooh.
super cool like setting, and really interesting to like kind of get some of that stuff. Um, Maybe I'll give it a try. Maybe another try in 2021. Why not? Like, just like foods and stuff like that that you maybe didn't like in years past. I'll give it another shot. Why not?
Keep reading another shot. I love that.
I think part of it is that I got like the fun of reading beat out of me in high school, which is like you have to finish this book in like 2 weeks, and it was like classic
Yeah,
literature and
yeah.
stuff like that. So
The term reading for joy lost its meaning for me also, I would say for sure. High school and college, you're like, where is the joy in stress reading?
yeah, no,
Stress
exactly.
giving. There used to be that game show on Game Show Network called Cram, where the contestants would have to stay up all night, like reading as many like giant books as they could and then like be quizzed on it the next day. So like that is very reminiscent of how I used to functionally read books for school.
Yeah.
No joy in the cramming. But yeah, now that you can leisurely read books, the last book that I read was Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Streisand, and it's a compilation of her advice column
Mm,
and
mhm.
answers. So I like it because it was just like tiny like snippets. So it's like I would read a letter, read the response, and then I'm like, okay, well, like that was basically it was just so many chapters of little stories. And I'm like, oh, this is like bite-sized good nuggets of advice. So I was here for that. That was a really great book.
Totally. And I think maybe it's just like I have to find the right genre of book that I would like to read again. Because like right now reading is just like a big giant like overly generic box. I think I just need to find the stuff again. Like
Yeah.
I definitely don't think I'm like a historical nonfiction or even historical fiction kind of person. I had to read, was it Guns, Germs, and Steel, I think, a while back, which was like the thing to read at the time.
Hmm.
Nope, not for me. I also had to read like, um, actually, I did like In Our Time, which is by Ernest Hemingway. And it's kind of like a collection of short stories and stuff like that, which I think was also an interesting way to kind of get like different vignettes of things. Um,
Yes.
so perhaps it's just a matter of like finding stuff again. And I think I just need to maybe use my library more often to be able to experiment a little bit easier instead of like, all right, cool. Well, I just bought like 30 books and I didn't like any of them.
Yeah, the library is definitely way low risk.
Right. I think the last book that I actually was reading was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius because like I was using it in a functional way, not necessarily just as like a relaxation thing, but functionally thinking about like what life did I want to lead, and how can I maybe take some guidance from people in the past and their own like ways of living. And the idea of stoicism in general like is super interesting to me because it has a lot of parallels to um, philosophical thought that I grew up with within Indian culture. There's a lot of like similarities with just general Eastern religion in general, and kind of what you could have there. But then also like Hellenistic thought and thinking about some of the more individualistic ways of doing things. That's bridging those two was kind of like really interesting to see for me.
That's awesome. See, so I'm really excited to hear about how your literary journey is going to go in 2021, and we can circle back to this at the end of the year and see.
2022, January 1st, like that episode. Let's go.
Yes, remind me in a year.
Right.
Well, I think we gave a lot of really great ideas to get your mind flowing on different areas of your life that you might want to consider creating an intention, creating a goal, creating a resolution and or mantra for in 2021. If you think of any others, please leave them in the comments, and we would love to have that community vibe going on where we're just thought sharing. So, and thank you for being here so far. So, and joining us here.
Thank you very much for subscribing. The new person in the chat says, y'all need to date. Well, actually, you should wait a couple of episodes. We have something to talk about at that time. So make sure to come back, I think, in a couple weeks or a couple weeks after that, and you'll be able to find out more about the life of queer and sober dating.
Very hot button issue.
A very hot button issue.
Cannot wait to discuss. Yeah, if you would like, don't forget to leave us a message. Please, please do it. It's anonymous, and we would love to have your beautiful voice in our podcast.
For sure. Alrighty. Well, I think that probably is the end of this stream overall. So thanks very much for joining and sticking around, or thanks for checking out the VOD after the fact. If, again, you want to check us out, you can definitely check us out on social media over Queer Sober Social. And if you want to listen to the podcast, an edited version goes up onto more podcast platforms. So like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever really you want to look at, we're probably on there. So definitely feel free to check us out.
Thanks. We'll see you soon.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.